So, according to the International Conservation Caucus Foundation, or the ICCF, there is a very large problem of overexploitation of animals in Africa caused by illegal wildlife poaching and trade. So, there are a lot of people illegally killing animals in Africa, and these animals include the African rhino and the African elephant. Now, the poachers kill the rhinos to get their horns, and they kill the elephants for the ivory of their tusks. This has become a problem because of the boom in population and economy of East Asia. With this boom has come increased demand for wildlife products, and so the price of rhino horn on the black market has skyrocketed, as well as the price of elephant tusk. The price for rhino horn powder at the moment is around $30,000 per pound. This is more than both gold and cocaine. Rhino poaching rates, because of this, have risen 1,000% since about 2010, and elephant poaching rates have also skyrocketed, with Cameroon losing almost 10% of its entire elephant population just this year. This highly illegal trade has been aided by corruption, organization of the poachers, and poverty. So many government officials and law enforcement officers are being paid off by what seem to be poaching mafias. They're being paid to look the other way and allow this poaching to continue. This organization of crime, which allows them to pay off the government officials, is another reason why poaching has increased so dramatically. As poaching operations are becoming more militant and they're gaining more weapons, park rangers are having a harder time finding the resources to stop the poaching. They don't have enough guns to compete against these very organized mafias, if you will. Finally, this illegal activity, the poaching, is caused by extreme poverty in Africa. At the moment, the tusks of a single elephant are worth more than 10 times the average annual salary of an African person. This is ridiculous. Because Africa is so poor, all of the people are turning to poaching in order to make money, in order to make a decent living. This massive increase in poaching of elephants and rhinos in Africa is leading to a huge loss of biodiversity, and it is leading to many potential problems. Not only does the loss of these animals affect the elephants and the rhino populations, obviously, it also affects the African environment, African peoples, and potentially the communities around the world. So first, this loss could have an effect on various other populations in the African environment where the rhinos and elephants live. The University of Washington wrote an article about the direct effect that rhino overexploitation could have. And they found that in areas where rhinos do not graze, there is far less diversity in plant life, and so if rhino populations are being lessened by poaching, there will be less diversity in grasses and plants in Africa. Now, this is because when the rhinos graze on the grass, they are eating only specific plants, and these specific plants, when they're gone, or when they've been eaten, no longer are taking up the space and allow a wide variety of other plants to grow. However, if the rhinos do not eat all the plants, those plants will take up all of the space, and pretty much only they will be growing, therefore lessening the biodiversity of the area. This could be potentially problematic in that the diversity of this plant life could potentially hold the keys to unlocking medicinal issues around the world. The plants could be used for medicines that could help heal people. The University of Cambridge also did a study, but their study recorded the effect of the loss of elephant populations. Their study found that if elephants are not present in an environment, then the trees that the elephants feed on produce less of a certain hormone, which we're not going to go into, that attracts ants to trees, where the ants then make their home. Therefore, the ant colony sizes, because the tree's not producing the hormone, will decrease, and the trees actually become far less healthy. Now, this is because the ants are replaced by another species that makes the tree their home. However, this other species actually harms and weakens the tree while living in it. This, too, is a loss of biodiversity and could directly affect humans if these ants or these trees have potential medical benefits, if we can use them to assist in medicine or to help human races defeat sicknesses and survive. Along with affecting the environment around them, the loss in elephants and rhinos can also and will also directly affect the African communities. A large portion of Africa's economy is built upon tourism, and the elephant and rhino populations are some of the biggest attractors of tourists. Tourists oftentimes will come to see these elephant and rhino populations. However, if poaching continues and the rhino and elephant populations go down, there will be no more reason for tourists to come and see those creatures because they'll be so rare or they'll be extinct and won't even be around to see anymore. This could be very problematic in that then Africa's economy would drop even farther below where it's already at. They would have even more trouble making standards of living there. And if they would have less money because of the lowered tourism, they would then have to resort to other means of making a living. And right now, many Africans are making a living off poaching because their economy is so bad. So if the poaching continues, there's going to be less tourism, the economy is going to get worse, and there's going to have to be more poaching or things of the like. Therefore, it's kind of a endless plummet just down as poaching continues because the economy goes down and poaching has to go more. So we need to stop it before it gets extremely bad. Finally, the further allowance of poaching in these parts of the world could be problematic for the United States, in fact. If the poaching of elephants and rhinos by an organized crime unit, an organized poaching mafia, if you will, continues, then these poaching mafias could become harbors for terrorist organizations. Now, the United States has taken a stand against terror in all parts of the world, and this includes Africa. So, if these organized poaching units do continue, they most likely will provide safe harbors for terrorists, which means we will then have to send troops into Africa in order to try to stop these terrorists and their acts of terror, which means more of our soldiers and more of our Americans could end up losing their lives, and that could be extremely detrimental, and we do not want that to happen. So what can we do? How can we change this? How can we stop this from happening? Well, at the moment, the ICCF is in communication with African authorities and officials in order to try to heighten the penalty that goes along with poaching. They're trying to make it so that if you poach, you get in even more trouble. They're hoping that this will deter poachers. However, this might not be enough. Since the demand for elephant tusks and rhino horns is coming from East Asia, perhaps the way to solve the problem would be to get rid of the demand. If we could shut down the black markets that are operating out of East Asia, there would be no more demand for the elephant tusks and the rhino horns, and therefore there'd be no reason to poach because they wouldn't have anyone to sell it to. Thus, there'd be no demand, no need for a supply, no poaching, and the populations could go back up. Another way to approach the issue is how the ICCF is doing it. As previously mentioned, we could increase penalties for poaching, although this so far doesn't seem to have been working, and it may be a lot harder to enforce than previously thought. You can raise the penalty, but you still have to enforce it, and that could be extremely difficult. Or finally, because many Africans poach because the money is so good, perhaps work could be done to improve Africa's economy. They poach because they're not making a good living doing what they're doing, and they need more money to live a better life, or that's what they think. So perhaps if we could help Africa's economy, if we could introduce businesses or help them to build a better economy, people wouldn't need to poach because they wouldn't need that outside money source. They wouldn't have to make a living in a legal way if they could have a good enough economy that they could make money through legal practices. Then poaching would also no longer be an issue.